Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Tyler, for those of you that don't know, and this is a new podcast we're calling Kingdom Business Interviews. Here, we're all about unlocking the faith in entrepreneurship. So, if you are a struggling entrepreneur or a young entrepreneur and you're just struggling through life, hopefully some of the conversations that we have here on this podcast will be able to help you. And that's our ultimate goal, is to be out here and share value for people that are going through it like we all have. And today, I'm going to be interviewing Garrett Holcomb. He's a good buddy of mine that I have known since high school. He's actually started his own business from the ground up and ended up selling it and actually starting another one, about to go nationwide, right?
Yes, sir.
And so today we're going to be asking Garrett a couple of questions just to kind of get his story and get to know him a little bit better, and hopefully we'll share some value for you guys today so that whatever you're going through, if you're an entrepreneur and you are seeking to start a business, or you've already started a business and you're just looking for advice and you're looking for something to relate to, hopefully some of the things that we talk about today will help you out. Terrible interview start.
Hey, that's okay, man. Hey, we're a little new here, so we got this.
Yeah, this is my first interview podcast, so just bear with us. And we had two microphones, but I couldn't get the other one to work, so we're going to be passing the mic back and forth. All right, Garrett, so first question I have for you is going to be, can you share your journey of becoming a successful business owner at such a young age? What inspired you to start your own business? And what were some of the key challenges you faced along the way?
So, great question. For me, starting a business at such a young age, it kind of wasn't something I would say, seeking to start with. Basically, right out of high school, I went and was working at a big box retailer, Lowe's, and was really driven to grow at the Lowe's and try to really just stay in that corporate America world for, as long as I could. I thought it was a great opportunity for me. I had a lot of good people around me that worked there at Lowe's, and store managers, corporate officers, everything like that were really intrigued by my drive there at the store level. I actually worked my way up into a department manager position, was making great money, and was really, excited about that role, and was just wanting to really keep taking those next steps in furthering my career there at a big box retailer. From that point, I found a new role there at Lowe's, and basically it was outside selling. It was a sales rep position with a lot of people that I was surrounded by at Lowe's. Really pushed me, I guess you could say, and really encouraged me to take on that sales rep position. And basically what I would be doing is going out to people's homes, meeting with them in home to sell exterior projects such as roofing, fencing, decks, windows, doors, really anything on the outside of their home. And my first year, I was actually working out in Palestine there at Lowe's, and that store was pretty well known. I guess you could say that I guess that store needed some help in that role of filling that sales rep position. When I say needed some help, Lowe's and in corporate America, they always look at the bottom line. What does those year-to-date sales numbers look like? And really, the person I was coming in behind just, I would say, maybe wasn't meeting that target that Lowe's would like to meet. And my first year in, I had really good success, kind of doubled the growth there at the Palestine store. And it opened up an opportunity for me to go to one of the bigger stores, which was in Tyler, Texas. That being a bigger store, a lot more people to serve, just kind of opened up the door for me to be more successful as a salesperson. And so I did take on that role at the Tyler store after having some good success in Palestine. And there at the Tyler level, I was in one of the top 10 salespeople in that particular category of outside selling. And so really, gave me a lot of confidence to continue to move forward in that position. But like with anything in corporate America anyway, a lot of changes were starting to happen. And I just didn't really see that that's where I wanted to continue to stay on that journey. And so after a couple years there at Lowe's, I had, like I said, a lot of good success and became very familiar with what it is that people in the community were wanting for those exterior projects, like I was just mentioning, roofing, decks, fencing, windows, all of that stuff. And so one day, after changes were made and just corporate America continued to become more involved, I decided to leave that position and role and start my own company, which would be my first company, Supreme Windows. And I was 21 years old. Didn't really know a whole lot about business, didn't know what I was doing, but I knew one thing, and that was selling. And I knew that I could sell windows to anybody that I stepped in front of, and that was my goal, is to do that. And so essentially how it began is I already had good relationships with vendors and different people in that industry. And so I started knocking on doors and handing out little flyers, handing out business cards, creating a good little promotion for my company. Tried to start selling windows. Once I was able to do that, one door turned into 3 or 4 more. Started in a neighborhood. Had some good, successful entrepreneurs already around me that gave me some ideas and tips and tricks of the trade that have been in the industry or been an entrepreneur for a good period of time. Just kind of saw them as my role models and just continued to build on my clients and just really stayed hungry throughout that process. Continue to knock on doors no matter, what the sales looked like or what my day looked like. I was just continuing to stay driven. And I think that's something really, really good for entrepreneurs to know is no matter what, always stay driven. No matter, if you have a lot of sales one week, it's always about that next week. But I've kind of got a little off track here, Tyler. So what was that question again?
Can you share your journey of becoming a successful business owner at such a young age? What inspired you to start your own business, and what were some of the key challenges you faced along the way?
Sorry about that there. Really, I think that comes down to the final portion of the question, which is the key challenges that I've faced along the way. I think that my biggest challenges is, for me, to start, the challenge that I can really pinpoint to start would be my young age. When a 21-year-old knocks on your door and says, hey, I want to sell you $10,000 worth of windows, that's something that's one of those things that you really have to trust and believe in you. For me, that was always the biggest hurdle that I had to overcome. And now I feel like I'm just now to the point where I don't necessarily have to overcome that hurdle now that I'm 7 years down the road now. I think that was my biggest challenge is having that young age. And, just getting people to trust me. That was kind of the biggest thing because, there are so many people that will start up a business and try to get something going, and then maybe it doesn't work out, and then they're out of business in a couple years. And I could not, be that person for my customer. And so I wanted to make sure that they knew what they were getting with me. And I had a really good people, like I said, surrounding me that, kind of had my back along the way from the installation to the selling, continue to build a good team, creating a good perception in the community, having a good name underneath me, had great reviews, had a great looking website, all those little intricate things that created that good perception around me with that hurdle of still having to overcome doing this at 21 years old. I think that was kind of my biggest challenge that I faced is making sure that people did trust me at such a young age, and especially with my name being owner under that company. And they're, having to trust me with their home, coming into their home, and doing a construction project. Windows are pretty complex. There's not just a one size fits all, go buy them off the shelf at a Lowe's or Home Depot. Like, it is a pretty complex project, just like with, most construction projects, but especially when I'm in and out of their home, taking, holes out of their home and putting in a new, window. It is a pretty complex thing that you have to trust somebody to do. And so I think that was kind of my biggest challenge is that young age.
So let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people's biggest excuse and the biggest hurdle is financial challenges when it comes to starting a business. A lot of time you ask people, well, why haven't you started your own business? Well, I ain't got the money. You know what I'm saying? So being such a young age, you probably didn't have much money at the time. What were some financial challenges that you had to hurdle during that time frame, and what were some of the biggest financial struggles that you went through during that time?
Thinking back to the day that I left Lowe's, I had exactly $10,000 in my bank account. Like that's all I had, and I had to start a business doing that. One thing that I will say is I think that having good people around me, having set up like with an installer that had a truck and trailer, like that was a huge thing that I didn't have to accomplish, right away. Like I already had somebody that I was connected with from a relationship at Lowe's that could, transport my windows to the customer's house. But, even with that, that doesn't get you, the yard signs in the yard. That doesn't get you your polos. That doesn't get you your business cards, your marketing, advertising dollars, and everything like that. And I think that, for me, financial challenges, I really would have to say is, I don't want to say it's an excuse for people, but I think that sometimes it is an excuse because they're just afraid of failure. And I think in that aspect, you just can't be afraid. You have to just believe in yourself and believe that what you want to do, you can do. Because if you really do just put your mind to it and you put the work in, those financial challenges will soon fade away. Don't get me wrong, like in some industries, you do need, some money to back you to get it started. But for what I was doing, selling windows, I knew that if I could just get one customer to buy, then I would then be in the clear, because I didn't take on any debt, right away. I had zero debt. I wasn't, trying to go out and get all these different things going. I was just focused on selling one, and then I could sell two. And so I think it's just, people think, oh, you need all this money to start a business. And don't get me wrong, and like I said, in some instances you do, but there are things that you can do differently to accomplish it. Like, you don't need thousands of dollars to have business cards. You don't need thousands of dollars to have door knockers. You don't have to have, a bunch of money to go out there and do the work to knock on 100 doors to just get a customer to talk to you. You don't need money to do that.
To convince a customer to
Yeah.
say, hey, go ahead and pay us up front, at least 50%, for material or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to be creative. So that was one of the ways that you overcame that then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just being creative and, identifying new ways to get to that first sale, and then just building on that first sale. Hey, do you know anybody? Is your neighbor? And I just remember my first neighborhood that I knocked on, and my very first customer, it turned into three different jobs that were sold in that neighborhood just by a simple yard sign going in the yard. And yard signs aren't expensive, and so it's just building on that. But the other aspect of it too is, when people sell, 3 or 4 jobs, is not spending that profit right away, saving that money to think about what is your next step? What is your next thing that you're going to be doing to continue to build that business? Because, there are a lot of things, website, all kinds of different stuff that, goes into it to be successful long-term instead of just thinking about the short term.
Right. All right, so my next question for you, because I know we're running out of time here, is how has faith influenced your approach to entrepreneurship and business leadership? Can you share any specific examples of how your Christian values have guided your decision-making process in your business?
Yeah, I think that for me, my faith has not always been there, to be honest. It's been a struggle of mine. It's a struggle every single day, but I think that prayer is the biggest thing that I think has helped me in just really seeking the Lord in every decision that I have to make, whenever it comes to a simple business decision. What should I do next? What should my process look like? I think prayer is really the biggest thing that I can say has really helped me, because it's not always been easy, there's been times where my phone wasn't ringing for new clients. There's been times where I'm just sitting there at night wondering if I'm going to get a lead the next day, but just trusting in the process and trusting that God really does have a plan for us. And for me, for you, for anyone, I think is really the biggest part of it, because God's timing is really crazy. You could really be wanting something to happen, but it's just not there yet. And I think that a lot of people, for instance, in my scenario, as far as an entrepreneur, I feel like a lot of people do, give up just before it's time for God to actually put his plan into place. And, if you don't always see it all the way through, and you don't just continue to pray and pray specifically and all those different things, I feel like that it really can be, not necessarily detrimental, but it's just one of those things that people they just give up. They just give up. And I think for me, it's always just really trusted in the process, really knowing that God will have a way. One of my favorite verses that I like is Proverbs 3:5-6, trusting in the Lord. Do not lean on your own understanding, lean on, trust in his path, and he'll, lead you down that. And I think that's something that I try to live by, because it's hard to do. It's just hard to do, but because we get involved with our own day-to-day, we have our own worldly desires and just the distractions. Yeah, it's really difficult to do, but I think that if you can just stay the course, for the long haul, God's timing will really show and the plan will really fall into place. And that's kind of what I've found anyway.
I think it's a lot the amount of time that you spend building your spiritual strength will really help with that as well. Because I know that's what's really helped me. It's almost the same thing. You go to the gym, you work out. The more time you spend in the gym, the more time you spend working your muscles out, the stronger you're going to get, right? Same thing with your faith. If you spend more time in the Word, you spend more time listening to God's Word, well, that's God talking to you. You spend more time praying, that's you talking to God. And with anything that you do in any relationship that you're building, you got to have good communication for that to be a healthy relationship. And it's the same thing with your wife. It's no different with God. You have good communication with your wife, you're going to have a better relationship.
Yeah.
And so you have good communication with God, you're going to have a better relationship with God. And that's been a big life changer for me. So that's awesome to hear that it's really affected you and your growth and your success. And let me ask you one more question before we go. What's been the hardest failure that you've experienced that's been the hardest to overcome?
Something that I'm really super passionate about in business and entrepreneurship is processes and procedures, for customer, for the employee. Just everything, like what does that process look like for the customer to get them from point A to point B? Same thing for the employee. My business, we went through 2 years of COVID-19. That was a pretty big struggle for me personally, just because, starting out a business, everything was just up, everything was great. And then we get into the COVID years and it just kind of just not necessarily plateaus, but it just kind of stays stagnant, and just constantly having to change new ways of doing things, changing the process and procedures of things is always something that I'm looking at doing. And one of my biggest hurdles that I had was, I developed this great process and I was like, hey, this is like gonna be what we do moving forward. And we failed at it. We really did. And we failed in the financial aspect of the business. And, when I say that is, when you're growing, you're constantly trying to, keep growing, and you're trying to keep that momentum. And, whenever you have all this growth, you have, all these trucks running around, you do start to acquire some debt, and, you had to pay those bills. Your monthly overhead is, I don't know, $40,000-$50,000. You got all these employees, you got all this stuff. It's a lot of weight on your shoulders, because you have to know, all right, in order for me to pay myself, pay this employee, pay for light bill, the building, advertising, trucks, trailers, fuel, insurance, general liability, permits, just everything that is involved with running a business. It really does go on. And so when you get to that point, and then all of a sudden your business isn't going up the roller coaster anymore, it's maybe going down or kind of slowing out. It's like, okay, now we have to adjust. How do we do this? Because now we have this monthly overhead, but our profits aren't in the green every single time, or whatever the case might be. So just making that adjustment, I think, was the biggest thing, and just kind of swallowing my pride and just admitting that I failed at what I had accomplished, to have to build it back up to get us to that point of being back in the green. I think is my biggest challenge, and I learned a lot from it. Going to zero is good, not necessarily going all the way to zero, but definitely experiencing that trial was definitely big for me, just simply because the only thing that I had ever experienced was an upward rise, because I had all that drive. And, now that I feel like, I made it, and just kind of got a little lackadaisical in my journey and staying hungry, just because, on paper it looked great, on the perception it looked great. But as soon as that first little failure hits, you really got to figure out a way to adjust and not just quit. Just got to keep driving, try to find that next step to get you back to that green side. Hopefully I answered your question there. I just started rambling. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, man. No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing that. I know you're wanting to leave here at 11.
I got maybe one more question in me.
All right, let's do one more. Dude, that coffee, I haven't had coffee in like 3 days. And so it's like we come to this good coffee shop and I drink a cup of coffee. I'm like jittery as heck.
Yeah.
In what ways do you prioritize the principles of integrity, honesty, and transparency in your business dealings? How do you ensure that your business practices align with your Christian beliefs and values?
I think that to kind of start, I think like for me, it starts, I think, internally, like with my employees. We actually just developed these 3 rules that we're going to be trying to really implement into our day-to-days. And the first rule is no bad attitudes. The second rule is stay hungry. And the third rule is tomorrow is a new day. And I think those 3 things really help us out, mainly because, on a day-to-day business, there can be a lot of different challenges that we might face. We might have, an upset customer, or we might have, something that we did wrong and we're having to, eat the cost of this material or do this, do that. Just trying to stay the course and knowing that, tomorrow is a new day, not having a bad attitude, and really just Yeah, staying positive. I think that's the biggest part of it. Just being positive, staying in mindset, because to me it's like I'm so thankful that I get to wake up every day, get a new day, take a breath of fresh air, and get to live out my dreams. And like just having that gratitude every day, I think is huge. That's what I'm really trying to instill into my employees as well, because like we really are truly blessed to be able to do this, because as we've been sitting here for the past 25 minutes, there's people on the move up and down this street that are going through different challenges and all of that stuff. They're on their way to work, they're in between meetings, they're in between this, in between that. But the fact that, I get to live out what my dream specifically is just absolutely incredible. And so just having that gratitude is really, I think, the biggest way that I could answer that question. And having that transparency with customers too, just being really here to serve people, I think is my biggest thing. I think that, for me, I have never been like this salesperson that is just looking for the sale. Like I really am trying to help people with their project. I'm letting them know I am here to help them and not just trying to do it for the money. Like that's not what I do it for. And so I think that that's kind of the biggest thing that I would say is how I've instilled that into my business along with my employees. And I think that, as that continues to grow, Christian beliefs are still instilled into that way. It might just be a different verbiage as far as that goes, but overall I think that that's kind of what I'm looking at.
That's awesome, man. And I like what you said about gratitude too. I mean, it's almost impossible to be in a bad mood or like be negative whenever you actually search for what you're grateful for in your life and you actually find things that you're grateful for. I mean, because you have something. There is something in your life that you can be grateful for. And when you just take that in a moment of doubt or take that in a moment of negativity and you find that thing that you're grateful for, it's almost impossible to be in a bad mood. It's almost impossible to be negative. So if you're out there struggling with, whatever it is in life, with whatever you struggle with, everybody struggles, but just know that there is something in your life that you can be grateful for. And that is the key to unlocking the positivity and motivation and whatever positive emotions or feeling or drive that you need to actually go out and pursue your goals and go out and pursue what you're trying to accomplish. So I think that that's really cool that you touched on gratitude there. Really appreciate you, man. I really appreciate all your time. It's been like 10 years since we've seen each other. Yeah. I think last time we saw each other was in high school. Yeah. And so it's really cool to be sitting here and seeing all that you've accomplished, man. That's awesome. It's super inspiring. Hopefully we can sit down sometime again and kind of touch base again when we got some more time. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for joining us in Kingdom Business Interviews. Guys, if you are in the market and you're looking for new windows, Garrett actually owns a new company called Renoview. And if I'm not mistaken, you can actually go outside and take a picture with your cell phone and get a quote within 24 hours, you say? Yeah. Instead of having to call somebody and have a 2-hour, 3-hour consultation at your house and maybe wasting 2 or 3 hours of your time, you guys can just get with Renoview and take a couple of pictures and get you a quote maybe same day. So that's awesome. Yeah. And they actually just started a podcast as well, right? And so if you guys want to tune into their podcast on Renoview Online, I believe it's on YouTube. Yep. You guys can go check them out. I'll leave the link in the description below. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you back on another episode of Kingdom Business Interviews.